Story 1. Am I the a-hole here for telling my dad he's as big as deadbeat as his stepkid's father? My parents divorced when I, 15 female, was 8. At first, everything went okay for the first 4 years he had 50-50 custody with me and my siblings, 18 male and 20 male, till he met Kira, who has 2 kids, 15 male. Darren and Vicky, 13 female. It started off small, like skipping minor events or weekends to spend time with them. It got worse over the years, like he skipped my older brother's graduation because Vicky broke her arm and need both her parents with her. When our uncle passed away suddenly last year, we had to find out via social media and only knew we'd missed the funeral when my grandmother called my mom to question why we weren't there. That ruined my father's relationship with both his family and my older brothers, who haven't spoken to him since. Now, here's something you have to know about my father. He loves to brag about how great of a stepfather he is and how much he's helped his stepchildren overcome the heartbreak they faced due to their deadbeat dad, even though he went from 50-50 custody of me to 2 weekends a month if I'm lucky. Here's where I might be the a-hole. Last week, I was invited out to dinner with Dad and his family to celebrate a family friend's birthday. I suspect Dad only brought me because I'm friends with the daughter of said family friend. As usual, Dad and his family ignored me, but pretend to care when someone would ask me questions. My stepmom brought up Christmas and how they had a great time at Disneyland. Dad then started bragging about how magical it was for Vicky and Darren to experience Disneyland for the first time. My friend then asked me, did I like Disneyland? I said, I wasn't invited. Honestly, didn't know. They went till I saw it on social media. It's how I mostly find out about their family trips. My dad and stepmom started making excuses, but I talked over them and said, yeah, my dad loves to brag, treating someone else's kids so well by neglecting his own. By the way, Dad, when was the last time you've spoken to one of your sons? My dad then asked me what I was trying to make out. I said, you're as big as deadbeat as your stepkids. Dad, least he an addict. He has somewhat of an excuse. But you just want to play super simp for wife who's a bee by throwing away own kids for hers. Cue my stepmother yelling at me. My friend's mom told her claim down, which made my stepmother go red-faced. I then told everyone how my stepmom treated us like we were unwanted pets whenever we were there, and how her kids loved to smugly rub it in how our dad chews them. My dad got up to leave and said we'd speak about this when we got home. My friend's mom said she didn't feel comfortable with them taking me, so she'd dropped me off at my mom's and she'd filling her in on everything that happened. My dad tried to beg me to come with them, but my friend's dad told him to just leave. Stepmom and step-siblings looked extremely embarrassed, so they didn't say anything, just hurried out to the car. Mom said I was justified, but my dad has been calling me non-stop. I won't answer. Stepmom came to our house tonight, demanding I make it right, because my dad has been locked up in his office crying since that night, and my dad's side has been harassing her. Mom told her to tell it to the judge, then slammed the door in her face. I think I went overboard, since social reputations mean a lot where we live. Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. Your dad needed to hear the harsh truth, and it sounds like no one else was going to tell him. If he cared so much about appearances, maybe he should have prioritized his actual kids over playing hero to someone else's. Not the a-hole. Honestly, I doubt the dad would have even listened had it not happened in front of the family friends. She was able to finally speak her mind, and the family friends served as an excellent buffer and ensured she was safe afterwards. Crying over what? The fact that everyone knows he's a deadbeat? Not the a-hole. It sucks that everyone left it to a kid to do the telling. If he comes to apologize, if you feel like it, listen to him. If you're not, just be straight that you're not ready. If he doesn't apologize, well, bandage off then. Regardless, don't hold on to the anger and hurt. Get your mom to get you in therapy. Parents can do more damage to us than even we realize. I'm 45 and still trying to work through crap. God, that must have felt so good. Don't regret a word. Every word felt like I was getting lighter and lighter, And when my friend's family stuck up for me, it felt like I could breathe for the first time in years. Not the a-hole for pointing out the truth. If they don't like people knowing how they treat you, then they know it's wrong. They won't change. I'm sorry you're going through this. Sounds like your mom's a badass. Wish you all the best. She's amazing. She's made sure we kept a relationship with Dad's side, even though he wanted us to go no contact with them when they stopped talking to my dad. Not the a-hole in the slightest. Him not being there for his actual kids while rubbing in your face all these things like the trip at dinner is abhorrent. Even worse is the step-siblings treating you horribly. As for reputations meaning something, maybe that will encourage them to treat you with respect and decency. I'm sorry you have to deal with that, but it sounds like you have some good support with your friend's family and your mom. Honestly, you popped off, and I don't blame you. Your dad's been treating you and your brothers like side quests while acting like a superhero stepdad, and that's gotta hurt. You're 15, and it sounds like you've had to deal with way too much emotional whiplash from him. The Disneyland thing? That was the final boss level of neglect. Yeah, what you said was harsh, but it wasn't untrue. He needed to hear it, and clearly no one else was gonna hold up a mirror to his actions. If he's crying in his office now, maybe he's finally realizing how badly he messed up. That's on him, not you. You've got every right to stand up for yourself, and it's not your job to coddle his feelings when he's been ignoring yours for years. Just focus on you and the people who actually show up for you. Keep holding your ground. You're doing fine. Story 2. Am I the a-hole for telling my brother-in-law that I blame him for my sister's death? My older sister, Anna, would be 36 female, and I, 34 female, were always super close growing up, even though we didn't have many common interests. Despite this, we never really fought or drifted apart. When she got into a good college, I got into it too. When I got a promotion at work and moved cities, she moved too. Our parents were pretty normal, and we have an older brother, John, 39 male, though he was never as close with us. My paternal grandmother, however, suffered from severe mental illness her entire life and was never diagnosed, but I think she was depressed, like my sister. During her sophomore year of college, she attempted to end her own life multiple times. She had to take the rest of the year off so that she could recover at home and was put on antidepressants. My parents didn't really acknowledge what was happening, even with how bad things were. She wasn't depressed, she was just dealing with a lot right now. Or worse, they told people she got dumped and was absolutely heartbroken. When I started college, she returned, and we fell back into our old rhythm of being each other's biggest cheerleaders. Also, we decided to become roommates, to give our mom, 67 female, a peace of mind. This too worked out well for us, since we had lived with each other the first 18 years of our lives. Once Anna started getting better, she joined me in trying clubs, going to parties, and making new friends. I never wanted her to feel alone again. I understand if this sounds strange or overly close, but I think that our semi-codependent relationship was the best thing for us, given the circumstances. During my junior year and her senior, a friend of ours set her up with his roommate, David, 42 male. I wasn't crazy about him. I didn't like many of Anna's boyfriends, probably because of how protective I felt over her. But he was a nice enough guy. His biggest fault, to me, was his very traditional family. He didn't agree with their points of view, thankfully, but I still was wary. Anna adamantly opposed ever having children or being financially dependent on a man, something very different from how David was raised. If Anna had ever chosen either of those options for herself, or even became a stay-at-home mom like her mother-in-law, I'd support her. Around their 5th year of being married, David started frequently discussing kids with Anna. Every time she'd tell him she was uncomfortable with every part of the birthing process, her feelings about children aside, and didn't want to do that to her body and mind. She had a borderline hypochondriac anxiety around reproductive-related illnesses. Once she sent me articles on ovarian cysts when she was just a little bloated. She wasn't one to fawn over babies even. She looked at them like they were alien creatures. When we were only 17, she asked our parents for a hysterectomy. Obviously, she didn't get one. Though the main reason I think she was afraid of getting pregnant was having to go off of her SSRIs. She'd been on a very high dose for years, and the one time she went through a withdrawal, the airport lost her luggage while she was on vacation and she had to go cold turkey. I couldn't recognize her. She was near constantly sobbing, short of breath, and even stomach cramps. For a while, they'd agreed to adopt kids as a compromise, but David didn't give up, pushing for bio kids. At one point, he mentioned trying to get another woman pregnant, and she stayed at my house for a week. After that, I assumed he dropped it. Imagine my surprise when Anna announced at our weekly coffee meetup that she was getting her IUD removed. C told me that David had convinced her that adoption wouldn't be enough, or even surrogacy. He wanted the natural baby experience, something she was previously vehemently against. Apparently, having a little person running around that looked like a combination of them was just too exciting. Nothing less would do. I asked her if she thought this was a good idea, even though she hadn't been suicidal for a few years, and she said it was the least she could do for David. He made much more money than her. She had planned to taper off her meds over the period of a month. I thought she should take longer, but David was eager to get started. I honestly doubt she would ever want children, bio or not, if not for David, but who knows? A few months later, she fell pregnant. It was a nightmare. She was a hormonal mess since she couldn't medicate, drink, or even have coffee, and her, usually mild dysmorphia, got really bad. The physical symptoms were even worse: morning sickness multiple times a week, constipation, and fatigue. David was nowhere to be found most of the time, since, unlike Anna, his very demanding job couldn't be done from home. Because of all this, I moved in with Anna and David, so that she just had that extra bit of support. When she had her ultrasound, they discovered twin boys in her stomach. She seemed genuinely excited, and even told me she was happy her little boys would have a built-in friend like us. This glimmer of light was what made me feel like I could go out of town for a few days for a work trip. By the time I got home, she was gone. At 4 months, she just couldn't take it anymore. I was there for the funeral, but I couldn't take living in the city I'd come to know alongside my sister and needed a change of scenery. I already traveled a few times a year for work, so I asked to be transferred to one of our foreign offices, and my boss was super understanding. In about a month, I had packed up or sold everything and got a one-way ticket out of here. After 2 years, I recently returned to the US and, over the weekend, agreed to meet up with David and my parents for dinner. At first, it was nice. We all got to catch up with each other and reminisce about Anna. Mom and Dad are enjoying retirement. David recently downloaded Tinder. Things started going downhill when we started talking about her death and how we've been grieving. Things escalated, and everyone was teaming up against me. My parents and David, as it turns out, both hold some resentment about my sudden disappearance, since they were left to sort out Anna's affairs while I was off partying with insert country here boys. David broke down at one point, and he told us that he wished she had been killed, so he could blame someone. He said that, because no one else did anything, he blames Anna for killing his 2 baby boys. I know he was just saying that, and I can't imagine how he feels, but at that moment, I was seeing red. How dare he say that about my sister, caring more about the 2 babies who drove her to do something so drastic than the woman he married. I stood up and yelled something along the lines of, "If anyone killed Anna, it was you." My parents kicked me out of their house, rushing over to comfort David. Since then, my parents have been filling up my voicemail inbox with angry messages and nasty texts. They even blamed me for killing Anna, which is just wild. Recently, John heard about what happened. He lives on the other side of the country with his wife and kid, and thankfully heard me out. While he resents David too, he wants me to apologize to him for saying something like that to him, since he says David didn't deserve to hear that, and I need to keep the peace. However, I can't bring myself to apologize to the guy, despite knowing it would make my life way easier. So, am I the a-hole? Now for the comments. Not the a-hole. She was afraid to go off of her meds for this very reason, with a history of suicide attempts, and didn't even want kids. He knew this and relentlessly pressured her. Seems like she probably communicated she didn't want kids before marriage as well. That guy sucks and can go to hell. This is exactly why I fear getting pregnant myself. I'm on a cocktail of drugs for my AITA, and they keep me from spiraling and crying every day of the week. However, my boyfriend is very supportive. He asks questions and researches on his own. We even came up with a few plans. If he ever sees me about to go off the deep end, I told him to call a 5150, and he must watch for signs of PPD. The brother-in-law and parents didn't do jack for this girl, and it's terrible. OP is the one they blame for everything. Not the a-hole. The fact he blames his wife for killing his kids shows how important she was to him. The warning signs were flashing away, but he insisted she do what he wanted. He's not actually grieving for her, but for his lost progeny. Stay away from your parents until everything calms down. Inform everyone who is coming at you that you will be incommunicado if they persist. Where was your brother-in-law when you were having to be the one to move in and look after her? Work isn't an excuse if you're that desperate to keep her and your future kids safe. Not the a-hole. Dude decided he wanted babies more than he loved his wife. His choices killed her. Sure, she made them with him. Probably because with the power imbalance in the relationship, she couldn't have said no. You don't owe him an apology for saying true things. Not the a-hole. So, the 3 people that did not honor or care about your sister's mental health want to put the blame on you? Pushed you to your breaking point by acting like you were on some freewheeling trip when you moved for work. Your brother, you're not close to you. Apologize just to keep the peace. Why? Are your parents some prize? Is David, do you even want to be around him at all or see him ever again? It seems like your parents traded you for him, and it's disgusting. I would say good riddance unless you want to deal with this for the rest of your life. I mean, please go to therapy. You and your sister were very close, and this has to have been very hard on you. Not the a-hole, but here, I'll write your apology. David, I'm sorry for my outburst. Of course it's not your fault. It's not like you wore Anna down to get pregnant. You had no other viable options. She had to go off of her life-saving medication. Otherwise, she never could have been able to make you happy. After all, she loved and trusted you so much, she'd give her own life to make you happy. Oh wait, she effing did. Everyone is blocked from now on. As a big sister who dealt with depression and self-harm early in life, I thank you for taking care of Anna when she needed someone. And I'm so sorry that you're not being allowed to remember her with others who loved her as you did. You did nothing wrong. You loved her and she loved you. Sometimes love isn't enough. Story 3. Am I the a-hole here for discontinuing my nephew's scholarship after seeing his social media post being proud to Elon's Nazi gesture? I need your honest opinion about my dilemma. I have been financially supporting one of my nephews through college. My late husband and I set aside a fund for any of our nieces or nephews who needed help with education. He was the first to take us up on the offer, and I've been covering most of his tuition and living expenses since he started school last year. He and I have always been close, so this decision wasn't hard for me. He lost his dad, my brother-in-law, when he was 12, and I've tried to be there for him like a second parent. Yesterday, I stumbled across one of his public social media posts that left me speechless. It was a clip of Elon Musk doing what looked like a Nazi salute at Trump's inauguration. The caption read, "Free thinkers like Elon are what this world needs. Don't let the sheep tell you otherwise." I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I'm Jewish, and my late husband was too. Our entire family has been vocal about combating anti-Semitism and educating the younger generation about its dangers. To see my nephew, someone I've supported and loved dearly, share something that glorifies a fascist symbol was devastating. I immediately called him to talk about it. He dismissed my concerns, saying I was overreacting, and that the post wasn't literal. He said Elon Musk's actions were blown out of proportion, and that people need to stop being so sensitive about everything. When I asked him if he understood why the post was harmful, he shrugged it off, saying, "It's just a different perspective." This attitude crushed me. I told him that I couldn't, in good conscience, continue funding his education if he didn't understand the gravity of what he was supporting. He called me unfair and accused me of cancel culture. He later texted me, saying he thought family was supposed to support each other no matter what. My sister, his mom, has been calling me non-stop, begging me to reconsider. She thinks I'm being too harsh and that pulling his scholarship could ruin his future. She suggested I educate him instead of punishing him. I told him to read the history books, but he refuses because according to him, they're not factual. But here's the thing. I've tried. This isn't the first time he has shared problematic views online, though nothing this extreme. I've had conversations with him before, but it doesn't seem to make a difference. So, am I the a-hole for standing up my principles? Now for the comments. If he isn't prepared to read the history, I can't see much point in funding a scholarship for someone not interested in learning. Huge waste of money. And that's besides the principle of it. Not the a-hole. Principles are all some have anymore. Opposing symbols and ideologies of hatred are non-negotiable for me. I can't turn a blind eye to harmful behaviors like this. I just had a huge fight with my significant other about this. You are definitely not the a-hole kid used all the right phrases. He knew exactly what he was sharing. I agree with the person who said to publicly donate it to victims of the Neos. These people are being made to feel comfortable coming out of the woodwork, and I think it's high time to learn they aren't welcome. Losing what is essentially a scholarship would have happened if this was complained about, so let him learn this way before he has to learn a much harder way. These people use violence to get their point across, and the day will come that it finds them in return. I pray people will come to their senses before then, but I won't hold my breath. They know exactly what they stand for and what it means, which is why they use all those stupid phrases. Are you kidding me? Your nephew sounds like the antithesis of what you stand for. Why on earth would you support him and his mentality? He wasn't even remotely apologetic, or even, at minimum, offered some semblance of empathy for why you feel the way you do. He is a grifter, pure and simple, just like the jerks he supports. I would stop supporting him so quickly his head would spin. Perhaps then, he would learn that his actions have consequences. I am infuriated for you. You should be too. Thank you for listening. If you like the video, consider like and subscribe. If you want more stories like these, turn on your notification to receive the latest stories.